The passing of Francis left a void. His words, uttered before his death, stirred unease. The circumstances of his funeral, the whispers of resignation and prophecy, and the claims of Daniel Mastrel regarding satanic influences, all fueled speculation. Francis was gone, and the question of his successor loomed, alongside anxieties about a potential apocalypse and the fulfillment of prophecies. The night of his passing was unremarkable at first. The apostolic palace was still, the guards' footsteps echoing on the marble floors. A strange, metallic scent lingered in the air. Francis' absence from night prayer was unusual, but not immediately concerning, as he had recently taken to retiring early. At 2:17 a.m., the Pope's physician was urgently summoned. A member of the papal household, noticing the persistent light in his room and the lack of movement, had grown worried. They found Francis seated in his armchair, his eyes open, his expression serene yet lifeless. A rosary lay fallen from his hand, and a sealed envelope rested on his lap. There were no signs of struggle, only a palpable sense of finality. The envelope, bearing the cryptic handwritten sentence, "Do not choose blindly, the lamb will resemble the lion," was immediately taken to the Secretariat of State. The message puzzled many, but for some senior cardinals, it stirred a long-dormant memory, a connection to a passage within one of the Church's most guarded documents. The third secret of Fatima, revealed in 2000 but suspected by some of being incomplete, came to mind. As news of the Pope's death spread, the internal mechanisms preceding the conclave began within the Vatican. However, an unusual atmosphere permeated the mourning. Grief seemed superficial, the farewell ceremony hurried. Francis' body was displayed for less than a day before its removal to the crypt. Cameras were forbidden during the burial. Adding to the unease, several Swiss guards were inexplicably dismissed that same day. In the pre-dawn hours, a hooded figure was seen leaving the gardens carrying an old leather briefcase. The secrecy surrounding these events fueled rumors that Francis had foreseen his own death, and that the impending events transcended a simple succession. The world awaited the name of its new spiritual leader, while within the ancient walls of the Holy See, a growing fear took hold, the unsettling feeling that this name had already been determined, not by human choice, but by prophecy. The announcement of the conclave arrived swiftly, even before the basilica bells tolled a second time. The rapid summoning of cardinals caused discomfort. Some had barely arrived in Rome, before being instructed to immediately isolate themselves at the Domus Sancti Marthi until the vote. The press was kept at bay, the windows of the Sistine Chapel covered from within. Nothing was to emerge, no images, no words. Yet, it was something else that troubled the most experienced cardinals. The tone of the summons, the cold formality of the protocol, the lack of a clear explanation regarding the Pope's last words, those enigmatic lines that no theologian dared to publicly interpret. A palpable tension existed between the older and younger cardinals, a discomfort stemming not only from the power struggle, but from a deeper anxiety about what, or who, might be chosen. On the first night of isolation, a cardinal of African origin reportedly suffered a breakdown. Rumors circulated that he had been found in his room murmuring ancient Latin prayers, clutching an image of Saint Michael. The official explanation was a nervous breakdown, but whispers persisted of a disturbing dream or vision, something he refused to share even with assisting priests. He was quietly removed from the Casa Santa Marta and never seen again in the refectory. In the hushed atmosphere, the cardinals avoided eye contact. Meals were served in silence, the air thick with an almost tangible tension. One Italian cardinal murmured that this was no ordinary conclave, and indeed, it wasn't. For the first time in decades, the cardinals were not merely choosing a successor, they were seemingly trying to avert a predetermined destiny. Some began to softly recite passages from the prophecies of Saint Malachi, while others gathered in hushed groups, away from any potential surveillance, attempting to forge alliances, and casting wary glances at their brethren. A sense of foreboding hung in the air, as if each cardinal suspected that a dangerous figure, a familiar face concealing dark intentions, resided among them. One of the guards confided in an employee that he had heard faint chanting from the Sistine Chapel the previous morning, long before the scheduled prayers, in a language he did not recognize. Upon attempting to investigate, the guard found the door ajar but the room empty. Lit candles, the scent of incense, and an open book on the altar with handwritten, dark-inked pages were all that remained. The book vanished the following day. These events transcended mere coincidence, suggesting a preparation for something beyond logical understanding, something that instilled fear even in those of faith. The conclave commenced, yet the choice seemed predetermined. This notion particularly alarmed the elders. Deep within the most secure archives of the Society of Jesus, a hidden room existed beneath the Pontifical Gregorian University in Rome. Unmarked on any maps, inaccessible by digital passwords, and secured by a solid iron door requiring 3 simultaneous signatures for entry, this room was considered a legend among Jesuits, though its existence and contents were known to those in higher positions. On the morning following the conclave's start, 2 priests, carrying an aged, darkened leather briefcase, discreetly entered the university's side entrance. They proceeded directly to the basement, offering no explanations and speaking to no one. Upon their departure, they remained equally silent. Only one of the 2 reappeared the next day, the other, according to internal sources, had been sent on an extended retreat to a monastery near Verona. The dossier within the briefcase had been the subject of decades of speculation. It was known to have been compiled by a small group of Jesuits during the 20th century's darkest years, following investigations linking ancient manuscripts, Marian apparitions, and unexplained phenomena within monastery walls. The Church itself acknowledged a recurring pattern as a Jesuit pope approached their end: unexplained deaths, subterranean noises beneath the Vatican, and altered dove behavior over St. Peter's Square. Francis, a Jesuit, experienced similar phenomena. In his final month, his public engagements were significantly reduced. He spent considerable time in seclusion with 2 Spanish priests, not listed on any official Vatican record. These meetings occurred in a private room at the rear of the Casa Santa Marta, devoid of cameras and microphones. No official statements followed these discussions, only a letter left for his personal secretary: keep what was revealed until the next one signs. If he signs, this signature is in the center of the dossier. This signature was not ordinary. It was a rite documented in just 2 handwritten documents, with specific instructions to be followed in the initial days of a new pontificate. For decades, this procedure had been ignored. However, with Francis passing and the conclave steeped in tension and fear, voices advocated for its revival. The dossier also contained a coded name, referenced in apocryphal prophecies attributed to an 11th century unknown monk. According to the document, this name corresponded to that of a cardinal present in the current conclave, accompanied by a symbol, a double-winged cross encircled by flames and serpents. Below this was a Latin note: "When the signal is given, the pastor will be led not by faith, but by power." The dossier's contents were not shared with the majority of cardinals. Only 3 had access. One disappeared that same night, the second suddenly fell ill and was hospitalized under guard, and the third remained silent. While the world speculated on potential successors, within the Vatican, some knew the choice was already made, not by election, but by another force. If the chosen one signed what the dossier demanded, they would not be easily swayed. Within the Vatican, discussions about the prophecies of Saint Malachi had generally been dismissed as a harmless eccentricity, a historical detail, a mystical curiosity to be treated with discretion. However, following Pope Francis' death, these prophecies were no longer folklore. They resurfaced in hushed tones within the corridors of power, not in open conversation, but in discreetly exchanged notes, avoided gazes, private masses, and especially in the worried expressions of cardinals who understood how to interpret the subtle signs of history. Saint Malachi, the Irish Archbishop of the 11th century, is credited with a detailed vision of the papacy's future, spanning centuries. Each pope was assigned an enigmatic motto, a fragment believed by scholars to foretell not only their name, but also their destiny. The final, widely feared motto spoke of Petros Romanus, Peter the Roman prophesied as the last pope before the end. Francis, the recently deceased, held the penultimate position on this list. This detail, long dismissed, gained alarming significance when it became known that Pope Francis had for years held private meetings with theologians studying these visions. An unsigned manuscript, purportedly recording one such meeting, quoted Francis as saying, "I am not Peter, but he is already among us." This phrase was echoed by a participant who subsequently vanished from public life 2 months later. The manuscript was then hidden in the archives of the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith, only to mysteriously reappear on the desk of the Cardinal Dean of the College of Cardinals hours after the Pope's death. No secretary could account for its arrival. While the name Peter was absent from the list of conclave favorites, some speculated this was intentional, suggesting the true Roman Peter would not bear that name. His defining characteristic would not be the title, but the role itself. According to ancient monks adhering to Malachi's occult tradition, his emergence would be heralded by 3 signs: a schism within the Church, a celestial event visible to the naked eye, and an earthquake dividing the lands of Rome. The first sign appeared to be materializing. Priests and bishops worldwide were being removed without explanation, and internal documents detailing communication control within certain dioceses were circulating. The Church was fracturing, though attempting to conceal it. The second sign was reportedly observed by astronomers at the Vatican Observatory, a sequence of unusual lights in the night sky over Jerusalem. No official explanation was offered, only silence. The third sign, the tremor, had not yet occurred, or perhaps was still awaited. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, a name began to surface with increasing frequency: Anton Balestra. Not among the popular choices or betting odds, his name appeared discreetly in documents, meetings, and private prayers. He rarely smiled, spoke little, and his presence commanded silence even from the most arrogant. Some whispered that his appearance on the balcony, as the next pope, would be met not with joy, but with fear. Balestra had never been a favorite, not even appearing among the top 10 names in expert analyses. His speeches were brief, his public appearances limited. He declined interviews, avoided social media, and did not participate in informal Vatican influence groups. Yet, he was observed, had always been, since his early priesthood. Among the elders, his name circulated as that of someone different. Cardinal Anton Balestra, an Italian born in a secluded village on the border of Lazio and Umbria, was raised by Benedictine monks following the unexplained death of his parents in a fire. At 19, he entered the seminary, and at 24, received special permission for 3 years of silent theological study. At 30, he was sent to the Middle East on an unclear mission, returning without official records. By 36, he was a bishop, and a few years later, a cardinal by direct appointment. Crucially, Balestra had been linked for over a decade to a secretive circle of scholars who preserved apocryphal manuscripts, ancient texts salvaged from forbidden ruins, that spoke of a time when the Church's last leader would not be chosen by men, but prepared from birth. The description of this chosen one was unsettling: one who listens intently but speaks little, whose gaze disturbs even the devout, one who would emerge from ancient ashes with words already spoken, but never understood. During the conclave, Balestra remained largely silent, observing without campaigning. Yet, he consistently knew the precise moment to rise, leave, and return. His presence was quiet but dominant. An African cardinal remarked, "When he passes, we feel that time slows down." The most peculiar event, however, was a letter sent by a bishop emeritus of Lebanon 2 days before Pope Francis' death. Hand-delivered by a personal emissary, it stated, "He has already been warned, the seal will be broken, and the name will be known to all, but only the blind will accept it without fear." The letter did not mention Balestra by name, but next to the text was a symbol, a double cross with 2 circles around it and a serpent in the center, the same image found in the final notes of the Jesuit dossier. In the 4th vote of the conclave, a highly influential Latin American cardinal interrupted the session, feigning illness. Rushed to the infirmary, he whispered to a young deacon before losing consciousness, "Don't let him climb the steps." However, when the votes were tallied, Balestra's name appeared more than any other, despite his lack of effort or solicitation. It was at that moment that the silence within the Sistine Chapel ceased to be mere protocol, it became palpable fear. Some hesitated, others remained silent, but no one dared to challenge the unspoken decision. The name had been uttered in hushed corridors. The question of who the next pope would be had shifted. Now, the inquiry was, what was his purpose? The white smoke had yet to rise, the bells remained silent, but the sky that morning was different. A dense, dull red hue, unrelated to sunrise or clouds, enveloped Rome. It was as if a veil had descended between the world and the heavens, dimming the light, and casting an apocalyptic pall over the city. Meteorologists offered explanations of Saharan dust particles, but the wind's northerly direction and the lack of such a forecast that day rendered their theories unconvincing. People paused in the streets, uncertain whether to proceed. Eyes turned skyward, reflecting the same blend of fascination and dread witnessed during great disasters. In Naples, fishermen filmed what they described as inexplicable columns of light emerging from the sea. In Fatima, the faithful reported slow-moving, luminous points in the sky. Despite overcast conditions in Israel, a satellite captured recurring light pulses over Jerusalem every 11 minutes for 3 hours. However, the most immediate sign was not visual but auditory. At 3:14 a.m., exactly 5 minutes after the vote confirming Anton Balestra's name, a rumble resonated through Rome. It was not thunder, for the sky was clear. It was not an earthquake, yet windows vibrated, and the ancient walls of the Vatican trembled for several seconds. Within the crypt where Francis had been buried hours earlier, the alarm system activated spontaneously. The Swiss Guard swiftly cordoned off the area. The official explanation cited an electrical malfunction, but witnesses claimed something had been discovered beside the Pope's tomb, a fragment of parchment bound with a red cord, bearing a single Latin word: Advenit, he has come, or the time has come. The parchment's origin remained unknown, and the Vatican, predictably, denied its existence. Nevertheless, fragments of the message were already circulating within select groups of prelates and scholars. An archbishop in Vienna, renowned for his work with ancient manuscripts, warned in an informal interview, when the signs in the sky coincide with the breaking of the silence beneath the earth, the voice that remains will no longer be human. It will speak as if it were, but it will not be. These words spread rapidly, causing unease. Churches experienced unexpected influxes of people seeking answers. Priests avoided the topic, and bishops abruptly cancelled masses. Inside the Vatican, Balestra's name was uttered less and less, not out of reverence, but out of fear. Meanwhile, in the room prepared for the announcement, an unforeseen problem arose. The transmission system intended to broadcast the new Pope's image to the world malfunctioned. The cameras went dark for over 9 minutes. When the feed returned, only the empty balcony was visible. No sound. No image of the elected Pope. This unprecedented delay, according to technicians, defied explanation by external interference. There was no signal loss, simply an absence. Then, as the clock struck 6 p.m., the bells tolled, but the smoke did not rise, and the sky, previously appearing burnt, darkened further. Abruptly, it was daylight, yet the world no longer knew the time. The Vatican traditionally dealt harshly with leaks, treating every security breach with rigidity, silence, and immediate replacements. But this time, what had escaped was not a document or audio recording, but a short, silent, low-resolution video enough to trigger an earthquake both within and beyond the Vatican walls. The recording was anonymously uploaded to a European server at 10:41 p.m. on the same night the bells announced the new pope. Within minutes, It reached the servers of 3 news agencies and a closed circle of independent journalists. The video's origin was traced to an IP address within Vatican City. From that point onward, silence descended. One of the servers crashed. The other 2 deleted the file, but it was too late. In the initial 24 hours, only a few individuals managed to view it. Most copies were deleted or corrupted. But those who did described something they could not clearly articulate. The video was approximately 2 minutes long. The leaked video depicted a dimly lit stone room featuring a bare cross on the wall. A figure in a white cassock sat, with their back to the camera, in a central chair, head slightly bowed as if in prayer. In the background, a partially broken mirror reflected something incongruous. A rigid, expressionless face with unblinking eyes, a face not belonging to the seated figure. Some viewers described the reflected gaze as blank. Others found it unnervingly penetrating. While the reflection remained still, the figure in the chair slowly turned its head to the left, as if listening to an unheard voice. The screen then went black for a single frame before reappearing with a blurred image of a door opening unaided. There were no voices, no words, no obvious symbols, yet the recording profoundly disturbed those who viewed it. 2 journalists who saw the video were hospitalized within 48 hours, suffering severe anxiety attacks. One reportedly tore apart his crucifix in the station lobby, declaring, "This is not what they say it is." The Holy See denied the video's existence, labeling any leaked images as fabrications. However, within the Vatican, orders were issued to search all employee electronic devices, several guards were dismissed, and 2 audio technicians vanished without a trace. A source close to the Curia confided despairingly that sleep had become elusive within the Vatican walls. Meanwhile, across the globe, the faithful began reporting strange occurrences: statues changing color, crucifixes darkening, and even communion wine thickening like oil during Mass. But the most striking development was Balestra's own behavior following the announcement. He had offered no word or gesture to the world and, even after the bells tolled, refused to appear on the balcony of St. Peter's. A confused crowd waited. Priests paced nervously. Cameras adjusted aimlessly. Then, a press officer inadvertently let slip a whispered phrase into a still open microphone: "He is no longer where we left him." The world watched. Thousands of faithful filled St. Peter's Square. Cameras were positioned at every angle. Broadcasters interrupted their schedules for what should have been a historic moment: the first appearance of the new Pope. But that night defied history. It was a rupture, unforeseen and subsequently suppressed by many. The Basilica's balcony remained empty for 42 minutes. No statements, no gestures, nothing. Protocol allowed for delays, but never such an absence from within the Vatican itself. Cardinal delegations exchanged bewildered glances. A group of monsignors was dispatched to the new Pope's quarters, only to return in silence, their faces strained and eyes downcast. One carried an object concealed beneath a dark cloth, proceeding directly to the underground, where he was locked away without record. The atmosphere shifted from anticipation to unease. The crowd began to murmur, some praying, others gradually dispersing. Then, From the dome's summit, an unexpected light appeared, irregular, pulsating, like a silent flash. Lasting only a few seconds, it drew all eyes upward. The sky seemed to vibrate momentarily, followed by the ringing of bells, but not the usual celebratory hymn. Instead, a deep, singular sound, like a funeral knell, tolled 3 times, paused, and then tolled 3 times again. Inside the basilica, gendarmerie guards received an emergency signal. The most extreme security protocol was activated. Doors were locked, preventing further entry. An internal order echoed through radios: suspend, cancel, silence. The inauguration was officially postponed, but no explanation was given. No statement. No communique. Only a cold note published hours later. For internal reasons, the first appearance of the new pontiff will be rescheduled. A sentence that, for many, signaled something far more serious. In the following hours, journalists frantically attempted to uncover the truth. Some were forcibly removed, others had their equipment confiscated. An Argentine reporter posted a message on his private account: "He is not who we thought, or what we expected, and maybe he is no longer." The sentence was deleted minutes later, and the author vanished. His cell phone was found in a restaurant bathroom near the square, still recording audio. The recovered audio revealed distorted sounds, like ancient Latin laments, and a panting breath that intensified until it filled the entire recording. The next day, rumors spread that Balestra had not been seen since the vote count. Some claimed he refused to wear the white cassock, others that he demanded total isolation. But among the cardinals, the truth was different: he was gone. His room was empty, his clothes untouched, save for an open Bible on the table, a verse circled in red ink: "When the shepherd is taken, the sheep will scatter throughout the world." Signs of unrest began to surface: vandalized churches, silent demonstrations, faithful abandoning masses mid-celebration. The Vatican attempted damage control, but the absence of a visible presence allowed something darker to fill the void of faith. Balestra's name, unspoken, was now associated with a fear inappropriate for a pope. Then, without warning, new smoke rose into the sky, this time black. The day dawned, but without light. The sky was covered in a thick, grey layer, as if a pall had descended upon the planet. At the center, the Vatican remained closed, gates locked, flags furled, cameras off. No sign of the new pope. No updates. No response. Within the Holy City, the clock on the bell tower stopped precisely at 6:06 a.m., a detail that, while seemingly insignificant, held ominous meaning for those who saw signs. Digital clocks across various sectors reported simultaneous failures. Mechanical clocks froze. Only the sundial in the inner courtyard continued to mark time, its shadow cast in reverse. Meanwhile, around the world, unusual occurrences were reported: people experiencing time lapses, figures appearing in empty churches, statues with darkened eyes, candles igniting without a draft. In a monastery in southern France, monks ceased their activities and sealed the temple, leaving a single Latin phrase written in ink: "Vacatus ac non vacatus, Deus aderit." Called or not called, God will be present. But a different presence was felt, something that permeated the air, surfaces, and animal behavior, a suspension of normalcy. The world continued to turn, but something within it had stopped. Vatican communications were cut. Emails went unanswered, phone lines were dead. Only a transmission, sent on a restricted frequency, was picked up by a military station in northern Italy. It was a short audio clip, a deep, slurred voice repeating a single phrase like a mantra. He did not choose to be seen, he chose to be remembered. The meaning remained unknown. In the following hours, leaders of various religions convened in secret, hurried meetings with omitted guest lists, and unprecedented security protocols. A silent, worldwide movement began, not to celebrate the new pope, but to contain something he had unleashed. Balestra's name was replaced with a hidden code, Pontifex, in internal documents. A circular letter, sent to dioceses worldwide, mandated that all masses be conducted only during daylight, with open doors, and a strict adherence to Vatican-approved symbols. An attempt at protection, or control. On the night of April 23, 3 days after the interrupted inauguration, the world came to a standstill. Communication satellites went silent for 7 minutes. Entire cities reported simultaneous power outages. At the exact moment the Vatican Tower clock resumed ticking, marking 6:06 a.m., the basilica's balcony illuminated itself, empty. Only the sound of deep breathing, transmitted without video, filled official Holy See channels. Then, a new bell rang, its origin unknown, its meaning unquestioned. The Vatican walls had not been rebuilt, but the world was already beginning to forget what it was like before that silence. While news fragmented and global attention dispersed, something moved beneath the surface. Among ancient documents and sealed books, a name that for centuries had been considered. A name, long cursed and circulating in hushed whispers, resurfaced. A name absent from the Gospels, expunged from the councils, deliberately erased by the Church itself, yet it returned. It appeared in a manuscript delivered anonymously to a Swiss abbey library. The archaic Latin text recounted the tale of a man who walked among the apostles, but whose existence was concealed out of fear. His title, *Custos Tenebris*, the guardian of the shadows. According to the document, his role was not to preach or heal, but to observe and ensure the delicate balance between faith and power remained unbroken. Traces of this enigmatic figure reappeared in records of apparitions throughout subsequent centuries, invariably preceding major schisms. His name, never spoken aloud, began with the letter A. A closely guarded detail within the Jesuit dossier revealed that this same name was engraved on the inside of the papal crossbow ring, an inscription predating Balestra's possession, defying explanation. A monk specializing in ancient languages confirmed, the inscription did not correspond to traditional Latin. It was a hybrid form, used only within the most secluded monastic circles during the Middle Ages, discreetly embedded within the symbolic structure of the double serpentine cross, the prophetic sign. And next to it, 3 letters, ARK. Suspicion grew among the few who dared to investigate. Could the new pope be a symbolic reincarnation of this erased figure, or merely a conduit chosen by this ancient force to perpetuate what should have remained dormant? The remaining question was even more unsettling. What if the forbidden name had never truly vanished, but had merely awaited its moment to be spoken again after centuries of silence? The most audacious scholars speculated about a non-canonical text, a writing suppressed even before the Council of Nicaea. Some dismissed it as fable, others as outright heresy, but within the deepest archives of the Holy See, its name was known, Evangelion Obscura the Gospel of Darkness. It was said this manuscript was written in a language predating Aramaic, a blend of ancient phonemes lacking defined grammar, yet inducing altered states in prolonged readers. Its words defied linear narrative, presenting disconnected sentences, inverted parables, passages where salvation was depicted as punishment, and the Messiah as a silent judge. The early church purportedly collected all fragments of this text, ordering its destruction. However, a report dated 1922 detailed the discovery of an original copy on the outskirts of Smyrna during a clandestine excavation funded by dissident Jesuits. The document was immediately taken to Rome, but never officially catalogued, remaining hidden and forgotten until now. Days after Balestra's disappearance, internal cameras within the Apostolic Library recorded unusual activity in the restricted basement section. A Monsignor not on the daily roster accessed the room using a key officially sealed for over 70 years. He remained inside for 11 minutes. Upon his departure, silence prevailed, but in the following hours, 6 ancient pages covered in a film of black oil were placed within a casket, sealed with wax, and taken to the altar of the Caecellum Sancti Trinitatis, private chapel unused for decades. What was read at that altar remained unknown, but a rumor began to spread. The content of the Gospel of Darkness had finally been understood, and, more alarmingly, accepted. The consequences were immediate. Reports surfaced of priests experiencing physiological changes, shortness of breath, irregular pulses, auditory hallucinations, while reciting certain prayers. In a Bavarian church, a mass ended in complete silence when the priest, attempting the consecration, lost his voice entirely, not due to illness, but a refusal, as if the words themselves resisted utterance. Then, a phrase circulated discreetly on slips of paper among high-ranking prelates. He did not come to renew, he came to rescue what was banished. The pages of the Gospel of Darkness, now under constant surveillance, became the new focal point of internal decisions. The Vatican denied its influence, but everyone knew its reading had begun, and that future actions would be based not on the known Gospels, but on something older, more obscure, and far more dangerous. For centuries, the name of Peter represented the foundation, the rock upon which the church was built, the first shepherd entrusted with the keys of the kingdom. But in times of upheaval, even the pillars are tested. Within the Vatican walls, far from the world's gaze, the legacy of Peter began to be questioned, not his history, but his inheritance. In the deepest catacombs of St. Peter's Basilica, a sealed crypt, known only to a select few, housed what tradition held to be a fragment of the apostles' bones. The place, long revered and inviolable, was now reopened for the first time in decades. A select group of cardinal theologians and a representative from the secret archives were summoned to witness an event unrecorded in any official document, without minutes or transmission, only the physical presence of those who entered and the ensuing silence of those who departed. Accounts varied, Some claimed the objective was to verify the authenticity of the remains. Others believed they sought hidden symbols interred with him. However, a whispered account from one of the attendees, relayed to a German monk and discreetly circulated among European monasteries, offered a different perspective. According to this account, an inscription was found on the marble protecting the reliquary, a simple, almost erased text absent from all records. The last guardian will not be Peter, but what Peter would deny. The phrase resonated ominously, for within the mystical tradition surrounding Saint Malachi's prophecies, a nearly forgotten theory posited that the final pope would not be Peter's successor, but his antithesis, an inverted reflection, a symbol of judgment rather than mercy. A man who would not open the gates of salvation, but would seal destinies based on past choices, where forgiveness yielded to harvest, to balance. From that moment, internal tension within the Vatican erupted. 2 cardinals immediately resigned and vanished without granting interviews. A third fled to the Abbey of Monte Cassino, requesting a lifelong vow of silence, his final writings speaking of a sleepless presence and eyes that watched even in darkness. The Pope had yet to be seen, but his absence already constituted a powerful presence. Then, in a silent dawn, a letter was left on the altar of the Pauline Chapel, handwritten and unsigned, bearing only 3 lines: "Peter has been judged. His time is over." Now we will talk about the name of silence. The letter was swiftly collected and taken to the Curia, but its contents spread, igniting a new wave of fear. If Peter had been judged, what fate awaited those who still followed his name? The following morning, the words "Ecclesia Finita," the church is finished, were projected without explanation onto the internal walls of the Vatican Library. No system was breached, no projector identified. The phrase vanished after 33 seconds, the age of the crucifixion. No further pronouncements were made that day, for the judgment had not concluded, it had only begun. Everything hidden now moved, not with haste, but with precision, as if each event had been timed long before the conclave, before death, before the Church's very foundation, as if time itself had been a mere veil, now fallen. The opening of the last seal was unannounced, devoid of ritual or sacred words. The sole confirmation emanated from a place few believed still existed, the room of revelation, buried beneath the floor of the Redemptorist Mater Chapel. A semicircular chamber of dark stone, inscribed with pre-Christian runes, housed a safe locked by 7 wax seals, untouched since the 1st century. Seals bearing lost names, protective seals against that which men cannot comprehend. That night, they broke, one by one, without explosion, without light, only the dry crack of each wax fracturing like ancient skin. Guards patrolling that sector were the first to report the breaches, but were unable to complete their reports. The last radio transmission was cut off by sharp interference, followed by 33 seconds of absolute silence. Then, nothing more was heard from them. Inside the safe, according to the description of a single surviving witness, lay an object, not a document, not a relic, an ancient oval mirror, with a cast iron frame and a crack in its center. Its surface did not reflect light, nor faces, but reportedly trembled as if breathing. When the mirror was taken to the altar of the papal balcony, black smoke rose again, but this time not from the chimneys. It emanated from the floor, seeped through the walls, and spread through the corridors for 11 minutes. The Vatican vanished from global radar. No satellite located it, no signal crossed its borders. When everything returned, a new symbol flew beside the pontifical flag, an inverted double cross encircled by a closed ring. The world stood still in the following hours. The cathedrals of Paris, Berlin, Lisbon, Santiago, Buenos Aires, and Manila simultaneously experienced the same phenomenon. Their tower bells began to ring independently, an irregular, a rhythmic symphony, like a lament. The faithful reported chills, dizziness, fainting. Some claimed to hear voices murmuring unintelligible words. In Jerusalem, a column of light pierced the sky and vanished in seconds. In Moscow, a wooden church inexplicably caught fire, leaving intact only an inscription on an inner wall: "He opened what was forbidden." The Vatican balcony remained empty, but the microphones finally activated. A single phrase was uttered by a voice no one recognized, neither young nor old, neither male nor female, something between time and space, something otherworldly. Only silence ends. The pastor fell. The doors were opened. What was promised is now among you. After that, the lights went out, not only in Rome, but in several places worldwide. And then, a new cycle began, not a pontificate, not an era, something older than books, deeper than faith, something that could not be undone with.